Nightclubs are up and running again across the UK. They're throwing open their doors in Wales from today. Scotland and England have already followed. But COVID-19 is the only thing that people are worried about. Police have confirmed that the number of cases of spiking being reported has increased significantly over the last year. So how safe is it if you're heading out clubbing tonight? The Home Affairs Select Committee has been leading an inquiry into the prevalence of spiking in the UK. So what we thought we'd do is pick through some of the evidence that MPs have been hearing to try and get a sense of the scale of the problem. Dame Diane Johnson chairs the Home Affairs Select Committee and joins me. Good morning.
Good morning.
What have you made of the evidence? We'll hear from some of the people who've been speaking to you in a moment. What have you made overall of the evidence that you've heard about spiking, particularly given that, last summer we heard lots of reports of spiking. It was quite difficult to get a handle on. Is there more of it happening, or is it just more people reporting?
Well, that's the issue, really, that we don't actually know, because the data that's available to us to look and to see what's happening is rather patchy, and there is no national database that you can look to. There's also a problem that people don't report, and that is because they think perhaps they're not sure what's happened to them. It may be that they're ashamed. It may be they feel the police won't do anything if they report. So at the moment, although the committee has now concluded its hearing sessions, we are going to write a report. We haven't decided on our recommendations, but I think the most striking thing to come out of all the evidence sessions is just that we're not really sure, and we need to get a grip on data. We need to encourage people to come forward and report. We need to have a much more joined up approach to what's happening. We're rather taken aback by this new development in spiking in terms of injection spiking, and that is very worrying.
And because particularly on there's like you said, drink spiking. Sadly, that's gone on for a long time, and that can be, drugs being put into drinks, or extra shots and so on, getting someone more drunk. But on the needle spiking, are you sure now that this is a real thing? Because there was some concern last year, wasn't there? There was sort of, things spread on social media. No one could really get a handle on, was this a lot of people were very worried about it, but was it really happening? But when we've got these figures, 1,300 reports of needle spiking made to police forces in 6 months. Are you sure none of this is a real thing which is happening in nightclubs?
Well, I think the fact that the police who gave evidence to the committee this week, Jason Harman, made it clear that the police are taking this very seriously, and that there are now people coming forward and reporting. Now, it may be that there has been an increase, particularly at the end of last year, which seems to be now tailing off a little bit. And one of the issues that I asked about was this unique to us in the UK? What's happening in the rest of the world? And the police officer said that it looked like it was fairly unique to the UK. There was some evidence in Australia of spiking through injection, but at the moment, so it seems to be the UK, and that's very interesting why this has happened to us in the UK. I think certainly there is a view that it's in areas of the country where there are larger student populations, and so that's something to bear in mind. And the fact that, after COVID, we've got nightclubs and people going out more. And you also reference why people were doing this. And that's one of the other issues we wanted to address in our inquiry. Why is this happening? And we know that in the past, there could be a sexual motive for spiking someone's drink. There could be a financial motive as well, if you want to get hold of someone's bank cards and clear out their bank account. But there also seemed to be a view that people were doing this for fun, for kicks, to see perhaps their friends or their mates, jolly up a bit or loosen up a bit if they were given drugs, or their alcohol, extra shots were put into their alcohol. So there's the whole of that needs to be looked at. So why are perpetrators, why are the people doing this? What's their motivation? And we know that needs to be looked at more as well.
Let's bring in Craig Harman, who's from St John's Ambulance, which is the volunteer-led first aid service. Hi, Craig.
Good morning.
I know that St John Ambulance have been putting together, your own evidence of the prevalence of spiking, because sometimes it's your staff and volunteers who have to pick up the pieces. What have you found?
Indeed, we have treatment centres in many city centre locations supporting the nighttime economy, and have done for many years. we started to become worried about an increasing number of patients that presented to our services that believed that they had been spiked. So we started to collect data a couple of months ago, and 7% of the patients that presented to us believed that they had been spiked. So we're really encouraging people to look out and look after each other when they are on their nights out. But importantly, that if people believe that they have been spiked, to not feel ashamed of that and to step forwards and indeed seek help.
And what are we talking about? Because I mean, sometimes we, you know, and I know when you've been out and somebody has too much to drink and they might say, oh, I think I had my drink spiked and that's why I've got a terrible hangover, or that's why I was more drunk than I was. And it might just be that they drank too much. What are we talking about when you think that actually there is a genuine spiking incident there? What are the signs that you look out for?
Well, this is the difficulty, because actually the signs of people that are suffering the effects of drink or drugs, or those that believe they've been spiked, will often appear very similar. They will appear intoxicated. Actually, many people will just believe that they've drunk too much. And you can't confirm whether somebody has been spiked or not unless you've had blood tests and laboratories come back and confirm the presence of substances in that person's body. What we're encouraging people to do is, if you're feeling unwell, if you've got a friend that's acting strangely, out of character, you believe they've been spiked, or in, the story that we've just heard where somebody believes that they've, been injected, seek help. Do not be ashamed, seek help. Ask venue security staff, and in the absence of security staff, in the absence of St John, we'd encourage in an emergency to dial 999, but absolutely 111 as a first point of contact if you believe that or have any concerns about being spiked.
Craig, it's really good to speak to you. Craig Harman there from St John Ambulance. What about if you're running a nightclub and you want people to come in and enjoy themselves and hopefully stay safe? Well, Peter Marks is the owner of REKOM, which is a network of major nightclub brands across the country. Hi, Peter.
Hello there.
It's been a pretty tough time for nightclubs as it is the past 2 years because of the pandemic. How worried are you about this apparent issue with spiking?
Well, you're right to say that we are worried. We wouldn't have a business if we weren't, because we've got to try and make sure that people feel safe. The jump in the spiking incidents last autumn, or should I say the reported spiking incidents, because of course we're all a little bit in the dark as to exactly where this will land, was absolutely no good at all for our business. And I'm not just talking about us as the largest nightclub operator, but for every nightclub in the country. Obviously we're concerned. Just to give you a bit of a flavour here, because it is a conundrum for us as operators. We want to be seen as safe. We search nearly everybody that comes in a REKOM UK nightclub. We have metal detectors, and we have medics on every major session in about 90% of our nightclubs. We have 7 million customers a year, or at least we used to have 7 million pre-pandemic. I'm hoping it will be 7 million again once we get going. But having searched probably around 50, 60% of those people, we've never found a needle, ever. And neither, importantly, have the cleaners. And there's no question we understand drink spiking is a thing. We're perplexed by the needle thing. And what we're worried about is that the chap from the St John's Ambulance was right to say that our medics are very non-judgmental. We don't want to ever say to anybody, we don't believe you, you just had too much to drink. We're very open-minded. But what we found, sort of right on the shop floor back in October and November, is that everybody was coming in saying, I've been spiked. We bring a police officer in who would then search to see if they'd actually had a needle hole in them. And in fact, on no occasion when the police were looking over people's bodies, did they ever find anything. That's not to say it hasn't happened. It's just that we couldn't see the evidence. But the problem was that this was actually stopping often people admitting that they may have taken a substance or had too much to drink. And all we wanted to do is look after them, because we don't want to be judgmental. And I really mean that. And I actually went into a club in Nottingham, one of ours, and the police were there, and I said, look, how's the young lady? She was clearly in a mess, and they just said, we're stretched all over the place tonight because Nottingham was the epicenter at the time. We've once again found there's no mark on her, and after about half an hour, she's finally admitted that, or her boyfriend admitted that she'd actually taken ketamine. What that worried us is that if he hadn't been honest and sort of told us this, we may have been trying to treat the wrong thing. All we want to do is make sure if people get into trouble, we sort them out. And actually, if I go back to around about 2015 in my company, we had a young lad who turned up at our door, who'd been in the club, and he was in a real mess. And his friends wouldn't say anything about it. He's just had too much to drink. He'll be fine. He'll be fine. Eventually, after about an hour and a half, this guy was in such a bad way. We called the ambulance. The ambulance said to his friends, "Look, has he taken anything?" "Yes, I've taken ketamine." Or no, his friends admitted that that's what it was, and he died. He died.
Oh, God.
And that thing sort of guides us. That's why we're so keen on making sure we want to just look after people, whatever it is. And what worries me is that needle spiking has become such a sort of a thing that so many people are now saying, I think I've been spiked by a needle. But it's stopping us, someone's getting to the nub of what might be the problem. And I'm not saying that it doesn't exist because I can't prove one way or another. All I can say is I've not seen evidence. I know that the police are gathering evidence. We've got to see what happens out of this. But, it's very tough because we want to run responsible businesses. We want people to feel safe. We want people to keep coming back. And the fact that this seems to only happen in the UK and only seem to be in nightclubs is anathema to me. It really is.
Yeah.
I've been in the business 40 years.
It's really interesting, and it's good to get your perspective on that. And because it's such a, because of social media and because of, news stories and that sort of thing, it becomes, it goes up in people's minds, and then, but then trying to separate that from reality and the fact that quite often, like you said, you are dealing with people who've drunk too much or may have taken something they shouldn't have done. And actually, they might be embarrassed in whatever way and saying, well, I've been spiked. That's a different thing. Peter, it's really good to speak to you. Best of luck with, the coming months as hopefully people come back to your nightclubs. So Peter Marks, who owns REKOM, which is a major network of nightclubs across the country.
Thank you.
Now let's turn our attention to students, because one of these stories really bubbled up from students, and students actually ended up boycotting some nightclubs last summer. Newcastle's got one of the biggest numbers of spiking cases reported. Well, Elizabeth Marriage is from the It Happens Here Society at Newcastle University Student Union, which is a support network for sexual assault survivors. Hi, Elizabeth.
Hi.
We've also got Julie Spencer, the head of student wellbeing at the University of Lincoln. Hi, Julie.
Morning.
Nice to have you with us. Elizabeth, give us your perspective on all of this. It still feels like, even after all this evidence has been taken by this committee, still trying to get to the nub of what is really going on. Is it more reporting of what was already happening? Is this a new thing? What's your perspective at Newcastle University? And, dealing with survivors of sexual assault, that's obviously, the worst possible outcome from one of these spiking incidences.
Well, from my perspective, there's definitely been a massive increase in cases of it. It feels like we hear it weekly that somebody we know has been spiked. My society recently did a survey, and 88.4% of people said either they had been themselves or knew somebody who had been spiked. And actually, as much as there could be a rise in it being reported, the vast majority of people don't want to report. They have said that the police have been dismissive, the hospital's been dismissive, it's been unclear how to. They've had to push really hard to have their blood tested. There's also a concern that they're not being believed, even when they've had very little to drink or nothing to drink. They're just being repeatedly asked, are you sure you weren't drunk? Are you sure you hadn't taken something? And that, it feels like somebody's trying to invalidate their account when, they're saying no once and they're being repeatedly asked that question.
Yeah, repeatedly challenged. Julie, you at the University of Lincoln, you've been trying to offer students rapid drug testing to try and, get to the bottom of that, haven't you?
Yeah, we have. Yeah. So, we come in from we take the safety of our students incredibly serious. And I suppose for us, we've recognised the impact really that not only has the pandemic had on our student population over the couple of years, but then this latest thing around spiking. So not only are our students not being able to go out. Now they're worried to go out. So yeah, as a service, we sort of spoke about it, and as student wellbeing, we support mental wellbeing, and that was one of the things we were seeing, that actually students were becoming anxious around going out. So we did some collaborative work with one of our academics who's programme lead for our chemistry school, our student union and Lincolnshire Police. And we decided to have a go at doing some urine testing. So we started in October last year. And yeah, as you say, Matt, they're rapid drug tests. So at the moment, we're testing for 7 different groups of drugs, and we're just looking to extend that testing even more now on the advice from Lincolnshire Police. But what we're finding, Matt, is that reassurance it's giving students, because they get their results in 5 minutes. So again, I'm not suggesting they're not being spiked at all. We're just saying they're not being spiked with the drugs we're testing for. So it could well be levels of alcohol.
But I suppose that's the thing, isn't it? And you know, having that reassurance, answering the question, you know, because particularly if, you know, when alcohol's involved, you don't always know yourself, you know, and actually having it sort of there in black and white and having that question answered is sort of reassuring as much as anything. Elizabeth, I touched on the boycotts that happened last year. Was that something that happened in Newcastle too? Is it something that's still going on of students boycotting nightclubs on certain nights of the week to try and make the point they wanted them to be safer?
It did happen here, and it was successful. Some nightclubs did make changes and make promises. Not all of them have stuck to them, unfortunately, which is disappointing. It hasn't really carried on, and that is the difficult thing. You can't really ask students who've been in a pandemic for over a year to just not go clubbing anymore. It's just not a realistic thing to do.
What were you asking for? What is it you'd like to see happen? Because I mean, it was interesting just hearing about what Peter was doing. You know, the searches and the metal detectors and all. I mean, clearly that's a big old, you know, chain of nightclubs. They've obviously got lots of investment, that sort of thing. It's not always the case in every nightclub, is it?
Yeah, no, exactly. Unfortunately not. I think we love, you know, drink covers over drinks, stuff to test your drinks. But I think the most important thing is for the staff to be trained to look out for people,
Yeah.
to be welfare trained, so that, you know, that if somebody's in trouble, they can get them safely home, or they can call the emergency services instead of just kicking them out because they assume they're too drunk.
That's a really good point as well. Well, I hope that this committee, you know, we'll keep across what the Home Affairs Select Committee says. I hope, though, Elizabeth, that you and your friends manage to go out and, you know, stay safe as well. There's Elizabeth Marriage from Newcastle University Student Union. We also heard from Julie Spencer, the head of student wellbeing at the University of Lincoln. And let us know what you think about that, what your take is. If you have concerns about drink spiking and so on, do get in touch with us in the usual ways. You can email studio@times.radio. And if you've just joined us, you want to catch up on what we've been discussing, don't forget you can always catch our big thing at 11 and the columnist panel on the Red Box podcast, the Times Red Box podcast, wherever you get your podcasts from.